thank the Dickinson Little Italy Festival, Galveston County, for inviting me today. And I also want to thank my family for being here today, because without their support and encouragement, this book would have been much more harder to write. And also, I want to thank Kathy Lennington, who's with me today. She is the love of my life. And without her support and help, truly this book would never have been written. But this book is, I'm here today to talk about my mom and why I wrote this book. And it all starts, let me go back one here. This is a picture of Mom proudly wearing the crown given to her at our Tamburello, and I guess it doesn't matter right now because none of the Tamburellos are here, so we'll just say the Tamburello family reunion in 1993. That's right, Sam, that's 1993, is that correct? She had devoted her entire life to our family, and this tribute was an opportunity for the family to give back to her by demonstrating our love and appreciation. And I can say, without exaggeration, that Mom was the most beloved woman I ever met. And I could say that because I had heard it over and over and over again by members of our family and friends, because she was just a special woman. She was a loving wife and mother. My mom and dad were married. My sister's in the audience, so she'll probably want to correct me. I think it was 48 years, 47 to 48 years. And they had a special love affair for that period of time, and I'm sure that she and my dad will love each other till the end of time. That's a long time, isn't it? And I also want to say that she was this very special, Sam, she was a very special mom, she wasn't she? Anne Marie, she was a special mom because what she was able to do is give special time to each of us, and when we needed to discuss things with her about what was going on in our life, she had that unique way of giving her full attention. And but she was also very creative. She was a wonderful writer. She told me that she was born with a pen in her hand, and she loved to write, and she loved to retell stories about how she lived on the farm in Alta Loma, and the special events that took place on the farm, were probably just kind of routine, Chris, and just mundane to you and I. But to her, they were very special because they were precious moments, that she recorded and would like to write. And she would write about these things, but she was also writing about journals. You remember the journals that she would write, books and books and books about the trips that we would take. And I remember when she was on a trip with our family, and she would have her little camera, and she would go from one side, Chris, to the other side of the back seat, taking pictures, and then she'd go home and then she'd write about it. But she was also high in demand for her writing skills and her communication skills because museums and curators would invite her, to talk about the days that she was young and growing up in Altaloma on a farm back in the Depression days. But she was also in demand, because she was a great historian. She was a great photojournalist, and her history and some of her valuable collections, like for instance, Aston Villa asked her to display her wedding dress. So she wrote about a lot of topics, Chris. But the thing that she enjoyed the most was writing a book, a cookbook. In fact, my sister helped her a lot. Because with that cookbook, Chris, she was able to tell the stories of not only, obviously, she's able to collect a lot of recipes, that were cooked and baked, on our farm, and things that my dad, as a fish commercial shrimper in Galveston, all of the recipes, and so that wonderful collection and stories, wonderful stories, Chris, about how what were the events, around these special recipes that she had. But one more thing that she wanted to do, because Mom always felt that legacy was one of the most important things, to be able to leave something to the next generation. She wanted to sew a family quilt and be able to tell the story of her life and how my dad and her met and how the families grew together in a family quilt. So this book is a story of Mom's quilt. And it all started this way. About 40 years ago, Mom told me that she wanted to sew a family quilt, just for the reasons I was explaining. And I said, Mom, that's a great idea. She's creative. She does a lot of things. And I didn't doubt her, although she didn't have a lot of experience in it. And I thought it was a wonderful idea until she told me, because I had an art background, I was an art director, that she wanted to be a part of our project. And she wanted me to sketch all of the pictures that would go into the family quilt. And then I said, maybe that's not such a good idea after all. I did what any boy or child, son, would do in a situation like that. I tried to talk her out of it. But if you knew my mom, that wasn't very easy, because once she had an idea in her head, she wasn't very easy, to drop that idea. So I said, okay, I would do it, but not too quickly, Chris, because I put it off, hoping, that she would forget the whole thing. But finally, after a while, because she would say, Joe, how is how are the pictures coming for my quilt? You remember that? They asked me, how the pictures. So I finally had to start. And it took me about 2 years to complete. Because, when you go back and you'll see some of these pictures, like the first one, is I had a real challenge, and she had a challenge, because I sketched these pictures. They were 11 by 14 inches. And inside all of these 9 different blocks for the quilt, there were over 100 different illustrations of family members in different stages of their life. So the first challenge was, how was I going to be able to sketch these pictures? Number one, where she would be able to transfer the pictures, to a quilting material and be able to sew it. And number two, I would have to sketch them where they would be recognizable for other family members, to see who they were. So I worked on them and worked on them. And after about 2 years, as I said, I turned them over to her. And she began. And she tried everything. Purchased the quilting material, did all kinds of techniques, even applique, and nothing seemed to work. And although she tried and tried, she just had to give up. And I tell you the truth, Chris, even a very experienced quilter would have had problems because it was just too difficult. At that time, today, there are more techniques and ways of transferring images to quilt material. We didn't have them back then because this was over 40 years ago. And so she gave up. And I knew that she was very disappointed because she wasn't able to leave that legacy to the family. And so I just took all of these pictures. I put them in my closet. I traveled around the country, different places with my work. And every time I would travel, I would put it into another closet. And finally, I decided a few years ago, to take these pictures. I was going to do some redecorating in my living room. And I decided to hang it, with some other old pictures that I had. And then the love of my life, Kathy, the troublemaker, suggested that I use these pictures to write a story about my mom's quilt. And I said, that is a great idea, because that is the way that I can fulfill her dream. And so it all starts with the first picture of Sicily. See, Mom had a definite plan of how she wanted her quilt designed. In the first block, she wanted a picture of Sicily, the country where her and Dad's parents were born and raised, the families before moving to America. And you can see on one side, this was the Marullo family. Right. See if I could get my pointer on it. Can't go that far. Hey, can you see that pointer on that? Can't you? Okay. On the left side, that was my grandparents, the Marullo family, and I have them very close to this little town called Portimbedico. That was a farming, a fishing community. And then the other family was the Tamburello family from a farming community called Ribera. And the thing I can tell you about that. And they both, about the 1900s, traveled to America, to, yes? Okay. No, I need to be able to determine. Oh, I lost control again, huh? Okay. I the okay. Okay. Thank you. And then the next frame is when my grandparents, my dad, moved to America, and they first spent some time at Ellis Island, and then they traveled to Galveston, and other family members, the Marullo families, greeted them. I used a little bit of artistic license because, Debbie, when you go to the Galveston Bay, you've seen that Statue of Liberty there, right? Yeah. So I used a little artistic license, because they did go to Ellis Island first, spent a little time there, and then came to Galveston. One story I'll tell you about their trip to Galveston, staying with family for a while. They were always trying to find their own home, a place to live. And my aunt, Ramonda, she said that she remembers that one of the homes that they visited, and they lived in actually, had rats as big as cats. And one of the houses was haunted. The next picture I want to tell you about is about my dad. My mom, for the third block of her quilt, she wanted the block showing how throughout his entire lifetime, Dad worked. Well, you can see the first picture is he is selling fish on the back of a cart. His dad is operating the four-wheeler. Still a four-wheeler, isn't it? Okay. And behind the mule. He did that for a while, and then he sold newspapers in front of John Seeley. And then finally, he got his own boat, and he went, he became a shrimper, but not just an ordinary shrimper, because he was hard working. A producer, Chris. And when you get the title as a producer in the shrimping industry by your peers, that's the highest compliment that one fisherman could give to another fisherman. And so he was highly respected. And my mom said that he was doing pretty well, but he had to not only support our family, but he helped support my grandmother's and her family, because my grandfather had passed away, and my grandmother told my mother that my dad was the only man that she knew that could support two families. And I tell you the truth, when he died, he left a void that nobody else has been able to fill. The next picture is the fourth block of Mom's Quilt. She wanted to show the day that the Marullo family first visited the Tom Marullo family at their farm in Alta Loma. In 1993, my grandpa and grandma Marullo were going to an Italian doctor in Galveston. And they met my aunt and uncle, Uncle Jack, and Aunt Frances, and they became friends. And so Aunt Frances, being the good big heart that she had, said, why don't you come and visit us, bring your family and visit us in Alta Loma. And by the way, make sure your son, Julio, comes along, because my husband has a sister I know that he will really enjoy meeting. And so they all came, and it was the picture that you can see is there. She wanted to show the day that the Marullo family first visited the Tom Marullo family at their farm in Alta Loma. And I wasn't there, of course. But as you can see in the illustration, on the right side, you have the fishermen. And they have the baskets and bushels of crabs and shrimp and all kinds of seafood, fish. And then on the left side, you have the Tom Marullo family, and you can see that they have all kinds of vegetables. And I believe they greeted each other with just warmth and friendliness. And back in those days, and it's probably true in a lot of families, especially ethnic families, showing that appreciation, showing that love, showing that that friendliness is always accompanied by food. One family brings food to the other family. And I can almost smell the bushels of shrimp, the fish, and the crabs. I can close my eyes and imagine the table set with fresh grown okra, cardams, tomatoes, and peas, and taste the sweet figs, the cantaloupes, and watermelons. I can almost smell the pastries, homemade noodles, and minestra, hot bread from the ovens, all homemade. Mamma mia, huh? That was good cooking back then. The next block is just simply stitched together. That's how these two families not only met one another, but they grew closer to one another. And the reason why they did is because they had so many common values, and common interests. My grandpas and grandmas, they had a deep love and affection for one another. And my aunts and uncles, my dad and my mom, they all got along well together, and they did things together. And they enjoyed the entertainment with relatives and friends. And so there was a lot of fun. There was a lot of laughter. There was a lot of happiness and things that they did, but they also worked, and they worked very hard. They were probably some of the hardest working families you have ever met, because everyone divided, the different kinds of work that they would do. And some of them, were very good at washing the clothes, mopping the floors, picking the vegetables in the gardens. One of my aunts kind of taught the other aunts, how to knit and things like that. And the men, my uncles, they all helped one another too, on the farm. They They took care of driving the family truck, the farmer's market, and all the things that you do on the farm. So they all did something. But they were older, you see. My mom and my aunt, Camilla, they were the youngest. And my grandpa assigned special jobs for them too. Well, their job was to watch the chickens, so they didn't get into the hotbeds. And so to pass the time, what my mom and my aunt would do is they would read to the chickens. The next block was the centerpiece of Mom's quilt. She wanted to capture the love between her and Dad as they posed for their wedding portrait. Kathy, why don't you come forward a minute? And I have a picture of the double wedding. Kind of explain to everyone, who doesn't know what a double wedding is, or who all these people are in this picture. While I take a breath. It's time for a commercial.
Well, this is one of my favorite wedding photographs that I've ever seen. And you can see it there or behind me. But at any rate, when they say double wedding, Joe talked about the families getting together that first time. And out of that meeting grew a relationship between one of Joe's aunts and uncles, and they married. And so it was a Marullo and a Tombrello that married. And as the families got together and got acquainted, two other couples met and fell in love and developed a relationship. And so in this wedding picture, you will see the groom on the left. That is Joe's father. And the bride on the right is his sister. And the bride on the left is Joe's mother. And the groom on the left is her brother. So one of the things I didn't understand for a long time is in this wonderful family, they would talk about double cousins. And the double cousins came from these double weddings because they had a mom and a dad that were from both sides of the family. So I love that picture. And Joe in the book has named everyone in that photograph, including the little flower girls. So it's a very sweet picture.
Well, thank you, Kathy. The event, the wedding. Now, you see, let me go back to the reason why the two families got together was because Uncle Julio and my Aunt Philly, they that was the purpose for them to get together. But my uncle, Charlie, Aunt Ramonda, and my dad and my mom, this was not something that was arranged. You understand? They really fell for one another. And so they had a double wedding. And it all took place in Galveston. And it's 7:30 in the morning. Are you ready for a wedding 7:30 in the morning? Well, you can imagine, how the Italians, they have to celebrate. That start early, don't you? And so they were celebrating. And Mom and Dad and the other nice couple, my uncle, they were going to go to take a train later on to Houston and stay in a very nice hotel. Well, they missed the train. Probably was celebrating a little bit too long, and enjoying themselves too much. And my mom told me, she said, to this very day, I have never taken the train. And she missed it. So I thought that was notable about writing. You see, this part, up to this point, are the stories, that my mom told me as what she could remember. And then these are me retelling these stories in my book. But now we're going to get to a point where I am more of the writer of, from the first person, because now I have a memory. Now, I was there. And so the first picture that you see is fun and games. I mentioned earlier, how much our families, and probably your family too, really used to enjoy family get-togethers. Is that correct? You enjoy that? And for the sixth block of Miles' Quilt, she wanted to show how our family enjoyed playing games and having fun together. And as you can see, this boat is my dad's boat. It's called the Edna Beth. And this was the blessing of the fleet, a picture. Are you familiar with that? Do you have a family who are fishermen?
Yes.
You do, huh? What is your name?
Tony Ringer.
Tony Ringer?
I'm Adeline's son.
Huh?
I'm Adeline's son.
You're Adeline's son. He's a ringer. Somebody put a ringer. I needed somebody here, Tony. Even a ringer, huh? Well, you see, I can't see past. Nice to have you here. So you know these stories. Why the hell am I telling you this? Okay. So anyway, the blessing of the fleet, it started early in the morning. Sam, do you remember the blessing of the fleet? When we would arrive real early, the guys, the boys. And Dad wanted us to help him decorate his boat. And we put up streamers. Not too much, because Dad, he didn't like that fancy stuff. You know what I mean? And so finally the women would show up. Did you ever go on Dad's boat?
I was on William's boat.
Yeah, Uncle William's boat? Okay. Well, yeah, Dad was doing the same time. Yeah. And so you remember how they would arrive, the women, they would have all the foods, the chairs, the tables, and something to drink. And then we would take off, parade around with the other shrimp boats, be blessed by the bishop and priest and other clergy of other denomination. And after that, then my dad would take us around the bay for a nice sail. The next picture I have of playing cards. That was pretty typical in our family. Playing bocce. Well, the way they played it back then, and the way you see it played now, and the way you read about it, or you see these really fine-looking men, in suits on a grass court, taking a little ball and a big one-size ball and rolling it. Yeah, well, they didn't have my family had a different way of playing. It was more interesting. I remember watching it one time, and what they would do is there was a little walkway between Grandpa's house and the outhouse, and that's where in this little this little dirt trail, which wasn't very even. That's where they would roll the balls. They would start off, by taking a little ball, and they'd pound it into the ground and put money on top of it. Then they would, the family, the men would break up into partners, and one would throw the ball, and the other one would hope that they would knock the money off close to the ball. Just ordinary stuff, right, Tony? But that's when it got interesting. I remember watching the game one time where one of my uncles, I think it was Uncle Ed. Uh, he had an idea that he can strategically win all the money if he did a certain thing with his ball. And so he would take his ball, he would run up to the line. He would pull it back like that. He said, "Ball, chief." And the ball would travel into the air. It would hit the little ball, and then the little ball, the dirt, and all balls and everything went in every direction, and people would run for cover. They don't make games like that anymore. And the other picture I have is when we went to San Antonio. And the reason why I have that picture is the only time that our entire family, Sam, you remember that? Our entire family went as a family. Next picture is a double pleasure. And Mom wanted the 7 quilt block to show special family celebrations, including the 25th anniversary of her dad, Uncle Charlie, and Aunt Ramonda, a double wedding. And we also had also sketched my brother Sam over here. He has a cap and gown on because he was getting his master's and PhD, and what was it, master's or PhD at the University of Texas? Master's, okay. Got a lot of sheepskins, and then a picture of Dad sewing one of his nets, and then the picture I want you to focus on is the celebrations of the wedding anniversaries, 25th wedding anniversary. One of them was at Franco's, and a picture of Dad getting his diploma. Actually, he robbed my cap and gown, and Mom took a picture of him. He thought he had a PhD for nuclear science. He was so proud he was holding that diploma. And then I have pictures of the 8th block of Mom's quilt. She wanted to show the special relationship she and Dad had with their brothers and sisters and how much fun they had together. And my dad is the one with the scratching his head back here with his sweater, and his brothers and sister. One of the brothers is Uncle Dominic, who was deceased, and he wasn't in that picture. And this is the Giuseppe family, my mom in front of her with her sisters and brothers. And then Uncle Pete, was not in that picture. And then finally, New Familia. For the 9th block of Mom's quilt, she wanted to show the special relationship she and Dad had with each of their children and grandchildren and the great times we all had together. And you can see that my brother Sam is back there, the guy with the big mustache, and my sister. She might not recognize herself, but she's back there, and my family and all our children together. So as we grew older, then we would instead of going to Mom and Dad's house, they would come to our house. And then finally, you can see if she was able to complete her quilt, if she had sewn it. with the 9 blocks, that I illustrated. This is what the quilt would have looked like. So now I can finally say, Mom, your quilt is finished. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that.